What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and we are here with another edition of Overthinking MTG. And this episode is brought to you by sheer determination, because I know the viewer count as of right now on these videos isn't great by YouTube standards, but you know what? It's not zero. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to stay if you're going to stay. And even if you're not, I'm going to stay here. So hopefully you like what I'm laying down. If not, have a great day. Find somebody you do like. That's cool too. If you do like what I'm doing, twitch.tv/hamhawks42. You can see it live, and I also do my best to keep up with chat and stay as engaged as possible. Seriously, come by and I don't know, just come by and hang out. Ask me any questions that you want. Seriously. You can also make me overthink MTG live on stream for $0. There's no donation requirement. It is a channel points thing, so you do have to stick around. But if you have a couple channel points, you can make me overthink your favorite MTG card live on air. So anyway, right now, let's go ahead and get into the episode now that I'm done with my self-aggrandizing sales pitch. All right. So, cool. So today we are looking at, so I just hit the random card. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. We're looking at Spotted Griffin, and it is a 2/3 flyer for 4. And this particular version was printed in Masters Edition 4. I'm not exactly sure what that is. It looks like this card was originally printed in Portal at Common. Okay, now Portal is a set that was printed way back in the day that was, if I'm not mistaken, geared towards newer players. And so as a result, there's a lot of low power stuff in that set, especially at the common rank, or rank, common rarity. Like, there are cards. Like, a great example of this is a card called Elven Cash, where for 4 mana at sorcery speed, I think, take a card from your graveyard, put it in your hand. I don't know if you guys are familiar. There's also a card called Regrowth that is that same card for 2. It was half as much. And so that's one of those things where, like, cards in Portal, and I happen to have had an Elven Cash that I picked up somewhere along the way, which is the only reason that came to mind. But Portal, the cards in Portal are just powered down and not that great. Also, as you can see from this particular outline, it has an interesting feature of the text box where the rules text is in bold, and then there is a horizontal rule, like a horizontal line blocking off the rules text and the flavor text. I don't know why they thought that was necessary, especially because the font on the flavor text is italicized, and it always has been, if I'm not mistaken. So that's always been kind of called out. But whatever, they decided they needed to go a little extra, a little above and beyond, if you will, um, in Portal. So that's kind of an interesting detail. I mean, that is one thing that set had going on that was unique. Other than that, it's a lot of underpowered stuff that's just not very good. And this is an example of it. So Spotted Griffin, it costs 3 generic, 1 white for a creature Griffin, or summon Griffin, as it was printed back in the day. And it is a 2/3 with flying. Although actually you can notice that the power and toughness on this particular card also has kind of a unique look where they have a little sword indicating power and a little shield indicating toughness. So, like, again, like I was saying, definitely geared towards newer players, because that is a kind of quick guide so they can see exactly what those numbers mean. You know, folks who've been playing for a while, like myself, and if you're listening to this, presumably, you know, folks who are consuming the content are really entrenched in the game, so that the what is power, what is toughness, was a conversation that happened a long time ago. Presumably, although the other part about that is, if you're not familiar with Magic, or if you are new, welcome. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, come over to the Twitch channel. Man, I am really I am shilling like mad this particular podcast. I hope you don't mind. Um, but anyway, so the other thing about this card that I like generally is that it's a Griffin. That's about it. Like, that's like that's about all I got. Because a 2/3 flyer for 4 is I mean, a 2/3 flyer is a good body. Like, that's a solid body that can have a very meaningful impact on the game. However, at 4, it is just like, it is 1 mana off of playable, kinda. Like, 2/3 for 3 with flying with only one colored pip like this. Well, actually, you know what? Okay, here's the thing. Ah, here's the angle. So I was wondering, what the heck do I talk about with this? Because it's a Griffin. I'm assuming this is going to go into flavor context, but no, actually, I do have a gameplay implication for this, a gameplay discussion, as it were. So as far as the card build goes, a 2/3 flyer in white for 4 is absolutely terrible. A 2/3 flyer in white for 3, so if we were to just subtract one generic off of that mana cost, that is still barely playable. Like, that is that's like okay and limited. Actually, that might actually be pretty decent and limited depending on what else is around it. But in general, like a 2/3 flyer for 3, especially in white, is not very good. Now, you take that exact same body, those exact same stats, put it in blue, and then all of a sudden, maybe. Like there are some certain builds where if it's like a creature type that I can synergize with, it might be playable. Like that might be okay. Give me that exact same card in black, and I'm not interested because there are significantly better options, and flying isn't really as important. Like there's not as much synergy with flyers necessarily. Um, but again, if the creature type is playable, okay, like a 2/3 flyer for 3, and that would be fine. You put this in red, like a 2/3 flyer for 3 in red. I actually think that would be pretty decent because I mean, red creatures generally are, well, it depends on what kind of strategy you're running, but that's one of those where like the rate seems better there. But here's ultimately my point. Well, and the reason that okay, let me just on red for a second. The reason that I don't dismiss it in red out of hand is purely because flyers in red tend to be large. You know, you think dragons, you think 5 drops, 6 drops. I mean, I know there's some really solid 4 drops as well, but the moment you get like small red flyers is something that they do exist, but there aren't as many of them, and so you have fewer options if going aggro with flyers is something you want. Now, would I rather have a 2/3 flyer for 3, or would I rather have a Chandra Spitfire, which comes onto the battlefield as a 1/3 flyer for 3 that can conditionally pump? I would much rather have the Spitfire 99% of the time. But Spitfire is also a phenomenal card in Red Burn, whereas or in the Cavalcade build, it's just absolutely busted. But in it is a good card. But a 2/3 flyer for 3 that is splashable in red is like, I don't know. I'm not mad at it. I'm okay. Although actually they've recently come out with like Everquill Phoenix and things like that, so maybe that's no longer the case. Here's my point though. You give me a 2/3 flyer for 3 in green, I'm listening, because green flying sucks. It exists, it's out there, but there are very few cards that have it, and they generally are not very good. Instead, green has stuff that can destroy flyers, and it has reach as a way of dealing with flyers, but it itself does not usually have flyers. So if you have any kind of reason to want a flying creature in green, which, let's be honest, flying for being so common is awesome evasion. Like flying is incredibly good, and it continues to be incredibly good despite the fact that it is ubiquitous. Like it's everywhere. It has been, I actually, it might be the most common keyword out there. I could be wrong. There may be, but anyway, but it's been around since the beginning. It has been continuing to get support since the beginning. Um, some sets are hotter on it than others, but there are flyers in every set. Like mechanically with flying, they nailed it. They got it right the first time. It's a simple mechanic. It's clean. It impacts the game. It matches the flavor. It's just like, it's all there. Like really, when you think about Magic, when you think about Magic the Gathering, what do you think of? You think of the 5 different colors. Absolutely. The color pie, that is like the foundation for the whole game. Like that is what makes Magic different from other card games. And a lot of card games that have been trying to kind of eke in on Magic's market share, you can see like how do they create the player identity? And that really is a major factor in whether or not that game is successful. I'd imagine. I don't know the CCGs super well, but I do know like some of the other games that I've played, I haven't really felt like, and I'm not going to name names, but there are a handful of other games that I've picked up, and the ones that lose my interest the fastest are the ones that don't give me a personal identity within the game. There are a lot of CCGs out there on phones, for example, that take certain properties and just kind of make a card game around it. And sometimes mechanically the card games are perfectly fine, but if I'm going through the same intro quest as everybody else and I'm collecting the same 15 characters as everybody else, and I end up with the same deck as everybody else, I'm not interested and I don't care. And on top of that, if the deck is made up of all these different like characters or events or something from whatever property I'm playing, um, but they aren't like, I don't know, they just happen to be the best cards that I happen to get, I'm not that interested. The color pie in Magic allows you to own an expression of how the game is played. You have an element, you get to choose the type of game you are playing when you set up your deck. Um, and your opponent is choosing the game that they are playing when they set up their deck. And when you pit them together, weird stuff happens because you're combining these disparate things. And the fact that, and at the heart of all of that is the colors. In its simplest form, I'm a white mage. I have a lot of creatures and we attack a lot, and um, I'm gonna make sure that black and red get stopped, however. Or I'm a red mage where I'm going to cast a bunch of burn spells and I'm going to have an occasional big dragon, but otherwise I'm going to have these little goblins that are just going to needle away at you. And I'm dealing, that's my style. That's how I'm going to play. I'm the blue mage. I'm going to sit back and my creatures are going to be pretty weak, but I'm going to be able to counter your stuff and you're going to really have to watch me because I'm going to mess with your head. Um, you know, at its core, you have these 5 different personas that the player can take. And then the other cool thing is you're not locked into one of those when you're building your deck. And so all of a sudden you have the combinations. Then you can combine colors together to make things that were never intended and that the designers never uh, built for. And then so as a result, you can really create your own identity and create your own style in a way that is incredibly unique and incredibly engaging. And that is something that means a lot. Now, how did we get there from here? Flying is a part of that. So as we were talking about the different colors, like every single color has a relationship with flying because it's been around forever and it's appeared on every single color, and it is so ubiquitous that there are cards designed to stop it. Plummet exists. I mean, Plummet, to be fair, not an amazing card. It's very situational, but like it's not awful. Like in those right situations, really good. But also cards with reach, like Giant Spider or any of the spiders that have reach. Those are very useful. Like those are surprisingly useful. Well, actually, it's not really surprising. It's not surprising at all because flying has been in this game since the very beginning, and at its core, Magic is a duel between two players, and one of the most core elements of that is creatures and combat. I mean, I know there are exceptions to the rule, obviously. With so many options, you can play all kinds of different games that don't involve creatures. But at its base, I put creatures on the field, you put creatures on the field, they fight each other. And then we do some other trickery along the way. But we have two armies of creatures going at each other in most games, especially in like starter sets, starter packs. Like that's where people start with Magic most of the time. If you didn't, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear, like if anyone out there started with like Controller Burn where they had almost no creatures, I would be really interested. I'd love to know how that goes because everyone I've spoken to, when you start with either, like, everybody's first deck that I've spoken with anyway has been an aggro deck. If that is not and the reason for that is because it is the least mentally taxing version of the game. It is the most straightforward. It's the most easy to kind of wrap your brain around, and that's why new players get the mono green beast deck, or they get the mono red goblin deck, or the mono white soldier deck. Like those are kind of there's a reason that people start with those, and I think that makes a lot of sense for new players. My personally, if you were curious, mine was a green stompy. Mine was like a mono green stompy deck. That was the one that really pulled me into the fold. And there was something about when I was able to win the game by, when I was able to kill my opponent by swinging in with a Thorn Elemental that I had buffed up with an Accelerated Mutation. I felt really good. I felt real good. Also, Titanic Bulvox was in that deck, to give you an idea. That was an uncommon from back in the day that has not aged well. It was a 7/4 Trampler, but it was a 7/4 Trampler, and sometimes the 7 power on a Trample, that makes a lot of difference. Anyway, but flying. Every single color has a relationship with flying. Every single player has a relationship with flying. You either love it or you hate it. Actually, you know what? No, that's actually the cool thing. There are a lot of people who love flying, and actually, blue-white flying is a really fun archetype. I highly recommend you give it a shot, especially if you've been playing a lot of control stuff or a lot of mid-range stuff, and you really want to just kind of take a step back, play something that is a little easier to engage with, and you just want to turn some cards sideways. Blue White Flyers is a surprisingly fun and effective way to do that. It's a really fun, and in most formats. I know in standard right now there's a very viable version, as is I'm sure there is in historic as well. But anyway, I bet in your chosen format there is a way to play Blue White Flyers, and it's surprisingly fun. Anyway, it is just a core piece of this game. And I think it's phenomenal and excellent and just all the great words. It fits. You have these two armies, they're hitting each other. Some of them can fly over the other ones. And if you have a flyer, they can block. Like the mechanics of it are just so clean and so simple and it's so easy to understand. That's one of those things. I have never played a second game with a new player and had them go, "Wait, what does flying do again?" Never. If once we've gone through a full game and they've gotten a handle on it, what the game does, wait, how does first strike work? Okay, I've heard that. That's a fair question. Or, oh, okay, wait, so this goes into exile? What exactly does that mean? Like, or wait, how does regeneration work? If you were learning back in the day when regeneration was pretty common, like all those things. Or how does protection work? Like those are like, okay, a little more advanced, a little trickier. Um, but flying is just so clean. It's just, oh, that's flying. Okay. Yeah, this thing flies. It can block your flyer. I gotcha. And so, the spotted griffin, 2, 3 for 4 with flying. It's not a very good card. Like just the price isn't worth what you get. If I see somebody play a 2, 3 flyer on turn 4, like if I see somebody tap out on turn 4 to play this, I'm gonna beat him. I'm gonna beat him soundly. Unless I'm also intentionally playing a powered down deck to meet him. So the only situation where I can see you playing something like this is if you're playing with a brand new player for the first time and you're showing them how the game works. Because this is a good lesson in that situation. And then it also has the added benefit of being a lesson when they realize that there are cheaper versions out there. Because I've spoken to it before on this podcast, and I'll speak to it again, I'm sure. There is a moment in every Magic player's life when they look at a card that was in their first deck and they realize, actually, I don't think this is very good. Huh. And that is a cool moment. And that's neat when you get to have that. Because that's a level. Like you're leveling up as a Magic player when you hit that point. And I wouldn't be surprised if there have been many, many, many players over the years who started back in the OG Portal days who looked down at Spotted Griffin and realized, I think there's a better option out there. I don't think this is the best I can do. And I have no doubt that this got pulled out of um, a lot of starter decks back in the day in favor of something more efficient. And that, you know what? That's not nothing. That is, I suppose there are other ways that cards can be valuable. And I'm glad that cards like Spotted Griffin that are incredibly inefficient give new players that moment when they can own the game in a unique way and start crafting their own deck. Um, yeah, so I appreciate that, I suppose. So, all right. Yeah, this has been Spotted Griffin, and a lot of talk about flying and the color pie and all kinds of stuff. I don't know how it like the worst cards that I think are gonna have the least amount of content I end up talking for the longest on. But yeah, this has been fun, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with the stream of consciousness that is the Overthinking MTG podcast. It is no doubt going to continue long into the future because, like I said at the top, horrible stubbornness come from this guy right here. And now I'm wondering, wait, that was before this episode, right? Not the last one. Yeah, if you're ever wondering if I truly don't script these, yeah, no, that was yeah, I don't script these. This is all off the dome. Yeah, the part reaction. Anyway, yeah, part reaction videos and podcasts and part storytelling. And sometimes we look at magic cards. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out, guys. You're my favorite people. I will catch you next time.